I'm the chairman of the Board of Appeals for the town of Belgrade. Today is January 13th, 2021. It is a little after 1 p.m. and we will at this time call the meeting to order. First, I'd like to have a roll call of the Board of Appeals members. Norma Blazer. You're muted.
I'm here.
Okay, did you hear what I said?
That I was muted.
Right. Did you hear we're gonna have a roll call?
Yes,
Okay, so your name first, Norma Blazer,
present.
David Bonner,
Here.
Richard Bourne,
Here.
Jay Bradshaw,
Here.
and Michael Hano here. Elizabeth Fontaine is our alternate, and she will be absent for this meeting. Jim, should we,
No.
should we introduce the other folks that are here, or is not pertinent at this time?
That doesn't matter. That's entirely up to you. Right now, you're in the deliberation phase. We continued, the board continued the deliberation to this meeting from the prior one. And,
Right.
At that point, the attorneys, the parties have been heard from. You may ask questions of them. They don't have a right to speak at this point, but you certainly have the ability to ask them to respond to your questions.
Okay, thank you. So the next item of business is to approve the December 16th, 2020 minutes, the draft that has been put together. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
Mike, this is Jay.
Hi, Jay.
I've got just a couple of edits that I would like to suggest.
Okay,
I'll go through a couple of pertinent ones. The first is that Carolyn Stiff be listed as present. Both she and Mr. Stiff were there. And then the other edits that I have are really to make sure that the tense stays consistent, where a couple of times it changed from past tense to present future tense. And so do you want me, I can go through those either individually, or I can just send them out. The only substantive change was just to add Mrs. Stiff's name to it. So I'll proceed however you'd like.
okay. Can't hear you, Norma.
You need to unmute, Norma.
Norma, you have to unmute. There you go.
I would prefer, Jay, that you tell me what you want to change so that I can change it.
Okay.
I'm not sure I would recognize everything.
Yep, okay. Down in the paragraph that begins with both appeals, so it goes, Chairman opened the public hearing. It's got two items listed, then it says both appeals. I'd suggest changing that from are being to were. The Board of Appeals, and I would then, the next sentence suggest the Board of Appeals with an apostrophe to show possessive responsibility was to, scratch the word will. Continuing down, the next sentence refers to the planning board's records, which included, past tense. Continuing down, the Board of Appeals examined the records, scratching will examine. Continuing that later in the sentence where it says there is, I would suggest changing that to there was. Continuing, again, changing an is to a was with regards to the planning board decision. Couple of paragraphs down, Chris Nagel, in support of the Stiff's appeal, that should be possessive, S-T-I-F-F apostrophe S. Same thing in the following sentence. Language, in that end of that sentence, it says the permit be denied based upon the following, insert a colon, to then go to the 4 points that Mr. Nagel made. Paragraph that starts with John Cunningham's name, I suggest scratching the ES so that just read attorney for the Jones. I don't believe it needs to be Jones as. think that appeared some other place also. Oh, it did, yeah, I'm sorry, sentence just about that. I think, if I remember my, my very strict English teacher correctly, that where it ends in an S, we don't need to do ES. It can just end with Jones and show both of them. I think that's all I had.
Actually, I looked that up and this is correct, but I'll
Okay,
change whatever
okay.
you want me to.
I'm very happy to stand corrected. All right, then I would just offer the suggestion of making the possessive in a couple of places and then changing it to past tense.
Okay, so you sent me that this morning, right?
Yes,
And so I could use that to double check what I just heard?
yeah, but I mean, if Jones as is supposed to be ES, that's fine.
I'm not going to object to any of that. I'll do it. So if somebody wants to move, I'm fine.
Mike, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as amended.
Okay, thank you. Second the motion, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a first and a second on motion to accept the minutes of December 16th meeting. All in favor, we'll have a roll call vote. Norma,
Yes.
David Bonner,
Yes,
Richard Bourne,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes,
and Michael Hano, yes. Thank you very much, Norma, for your work with these minutes, as always. So the next item of business is we will continue with the deliberation phase of the hearings, which ended on December 16th, 2020. Basically, it'll be a work session. So, Jim, do you have anything to add so far?
Not much. My attempt here was to put down the direction of where the board was going in deliberations. It's only a draft. This is your decision, your interpretation of the ordinance, your decision on these appeals. Feel free to correct if I've got the facts wrong. Feel free to make changes with regard to the reasoning if those are, your reasons. This is to be your decision. This is just a starting point, a basis for your decision. Tried to get as close as I could to where you were heading, but that's where you were heading and not necessarily where you wind up. And so again, you have competent counsel for both parties, people with strong experience in real estate and land use law. You can draw upon if you have questions, but this is your deliberation and you run the show.
Okay, thank you. So all the board members, I'm assuming, have done all the legwork that they need to do, received all the materials, all the pertinent materials, and have reviewed everything to date, including the notice of decision, the draft notice of decision prepared by Jim. I'd like to open it up for discussion or questions at this point. I think we should take the Mr. Sutton's appeal first. That's okay? So as you recall, Mr. Sutton had raised two issues only, basically. And they are listed in the draft decision.
Mike, this is Jay.
Yes, Jay?
The only comment that I would add, which I shared with Jim, is that my legal name should be John Jr.
And I've
Okay.
changed that on all the drafts in the signature line and also at the beginning now, so we'll be all
Okay.
set. Thank
Okay,
you.
great, thank you. Other than that, I thought that this accurately captured our discussion and where our deliberations ended when last we met.
Okay, thank you. Dave or Richard, Norma, do you have any questions or input?
Mike, I do not.
I don't either, Mike.
Norma? You're muted again. You're muted.
Okay.
There you go.
I don't know how we handle this, but we'll be talking about the soil report in the stiff deliberation. And if we do say anything about this number one, can we condition it on the fact that if a soil report is required, that any negative findings we could revisit this issue?
Jim, what do you,
I don't see the first issue that Mr. Sutton has raised as being anything that's relevant to the other. His concern is basically that there has to be separation between septic and wells under state law. And that where the well has been placed limits what he can do with his land. That's a different issue. And to the extent that he's upset about and appealing from the issuance of a wastewater permit, my advice is that ship has sailed. That permit was issued a long time ago. That has nothing to do with the soils report that's at issue in the second appeal. So I think these are separate. And I suggest what you could do is take a look at, vote on each issue. This appeal raises 2 issues. The Stiff's appeal raises 4. Vote on it on the determination for each issue, 1 and 2 separately, and then up or down on the appeal. But I don't believe that a finding with regard to this, that it's too late to bring an appeal from the wastewater permit, has anything to do with the second issue, which was whether a soils report had been provided.
okay. I don't know if that helps you out, Norma, at all, but,
I'm good.
okay. So with item number 1, with Mr. Sutton's appeal, is it appropriate to take a vote at this point? Does everyone understand and have any question? Anybody have any other questions, or should we vote?
I'm comfortable with voting. I don't know about the rest of the board.
I am as well. And happy to make a motion to that effect if it's in order.
How do I get rid of this little hand? I'm sorry, does anybody?
If you click on participants and click it again, it should go down. Did you raise your hand? Is that what the deal
I
is?
guess I did, and I can't get back to a pointer.
I think if you, oh, no, maybe not. Yeah. I thought if you clicked it again, it disappeared. But maybe not.
Norma, I don't know what your screen looks like, but if you look, mine's in the upper right-hand corner says mute.
Jay, thank you. I have it. Thank you. I fixed it. Thank you so much.
Well, you're back on mute again, Norma.
That's where I want to be. I couldn't get off. I couldn't get
Okay,
out.
don't touch it. All right. So does everyone have the decision in front of you? So Jay, could you make a motion, please, on the
Sure.
item number 1?
I'm happy to read it, or I would make a motion that we adopt the explanation, the statement found in paragraph number 1. Oh, let's see, there's actually a couple paragraphs. After it's where it says, based upon the shoreline zoning state law and record of the planning board's proceedings, the Board of Appeals conducted its appellate review and determined as to each issue. So that's what I'm saying. Those dozen lines there, starting with the Board of Appeals and ending with Board of Appeals. If you'd like me to read it, I'm happy to, but it's as I would suggest that we adopt
Where are
that.
you reading from?
It's on the first page. It starts off, the Board of Appeals recognized that the SZO section 15.j requires a subsurface waste disposal system to be installed in accordance with the main subsurface wastewater disposal rules. That one. And it ends with the appellant did not appeal that February 25th, 2020 subsurface waste disposal system permit, and so the matter was not before the Board of Appeals. The next paragraph is therefore for the reasons stated above on motion by.
It's on page 3, Norma, of the draft decision prepared by Jim.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So Jay, you've made a motion and I need a second, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Richard Bourne. Second. Okay, so we'll take a roll call vote and the vote will be to find against the appellant, excuse me, in this number 1 issue. Norma Blazer,
Against.
this number 1 issue that is in the draft, the one that Jay just read.
Against. Am I on mute?
Yes, you are.
I'm saying against the appellant, okay?
Yes.
Oh, wait a second.
If you vote yes, you're voting against the appeal.
Yes.
David Bonner,
Yes,
Richard Bourne,
Yes.
Jay Bradshaw,
Yes.
and Michael Hano, yes. So on a roll call vote of 5-0, motion has carried. We'll proceed to the second item. Of the Sutton appeal. Does anyone want to make a motion on that one to accept or deny that one?
Sure. I don't want to be the only one to make the motions, but I'm happy to. I would make the same motion that we accept the language which is shown in that on the next page, paragraph 2, which again starts with the Board of Appeals jurisdiction is limited to zoning and shoreline zoning matters, and then ends with, and so the matter was not before the Board of Appeals. But speaks to the surveying, etc.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thanks, Dave. So we'll have another roll call vote on this motion by Jay, seconded by David. Norma Blazer,
I am against the appellant again, so that's a yes.
Yes.
yes, correct. David Bonner,
Yes.
Richard Bourne,
Yes.
Jay Bradshaw,
Yes.
and Michael Hano, yes. The motion is carried 5-0 to for against the appellant in this number 2 issue that was raised.
And then
So
do
we're-
you want
Yes,
to,
Jay.
motion? You want a motion for the wrap up one?
For the decision, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
I was just going to ask for that.
I'm happy to do that one too. Oh,
I'll make that motion. For reasons stated above, I move that we deny the appeal.
a second.
Okay, so on a motion made by David and seconded by Jay to deny the complete appeal, after followed by 2 motions on the 1 and 2 issues raised, we will.
Can I make one suggestion?
Yeah.
What we want to do also is adopt this as the written decision. So if I could ask for an amendment to that motion, just to make it absolutely totally clear and to approve this written decision.
I'll
So
accept.
you're denying the, okay, so we have a motion that's seconded. It's in order for amendment if you want. So you're voting to deny the appeal and to adopt this finding of this written decision.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry.
amenable to the amendment. That's fine, Jay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we will proceed with a roll call vote to deny Mr. Sutton's appeal.
Well, on the, you'll have, the roll call vote will be on the amendment and then on the.
Excuse me, on the amendment.
That's right.
Okay. Norma, your vote on the amendment?
Yes.
David Bonner,
Yes.
Richard Bourne,
Yes.
Jay Bradshaw,
Yes.
Michael Hano, yes. The motion is carried 5-0 on the amendment raised. So now we will, with the, including the amendment raised, we will have a vote. Or we need a motion, another motion on denying this appeal.
I'll make the motion to deny the appeal as amended.
Okay, I need a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Bourne. Okay, and again, we will have a roll call vote. Norma Blazer,
Yes.
David Bonner,
Yes.
Mr. Bourne,
Yes.
Jay Bradshaw,
Yes.
and Michael Hano, yes. Motion again has carried 5-0 to deny the appeal of John T. Sutton. So we move on to the next appeal. So again, we have a notice of decision that was drafted after our last meeting. And I'm assuming everyone has reviewed that and reviewed all the pertinent material leading up to that is needed. And I'll open it up for discussions on this one this time. Norma,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'll say what I have to say. I've studied this, and I mean, I'm no lawyer and I'm no expert. I have to say that. And I think this belongs in the hands of lawyers and experts, first of all. I think the planning board was put in a terrible position on this. They're all experts in their professions, and they give a lot of time to the town, and they studied this, and they were left with having to define what the structure is so that an as-built structure in the shoreland zone could even be considered. And they decided that this was an accessory structure so that it could even be brought into the shoreland zoning criteria. I find that the Joneses tell us this is the third house in their residence. I find that important. And the second house is a shed that they use for an office and bedrooms and storage. And that has some square footage that's included in the total for the first building. So they have three parts to their building. And my question, I guess, is here, and I don't know the answer, why isn't this an expansion of their existing residence on a substandard lot, or what's it called, a substandard lot in the shoreland zone? I'm not sure why it wasn't analyzed like that, except that it's not connected, but the shed's not connected either. So anyway, the planning board saw two options. Either it's an accessory structure or it's a residential dwelling unit. And they chose this accessory structure because there was some agreement apparently that I haven't been able to find in the file that it's not a second dwelling unit. And so they put the condition on prohibiting appliances and prohibiting the preparation of food in this structure that's already there to satisfy the criteria in section 15. But cooking facilities are not defined in the ordinance either. And if I lived on the water in the summertime only, I could definitely get by without a stove. And I do have a freezer in my garage, and two of my neighbors have refrigerators in their garages. And some houses are sold without appliances. And that doesn't mean the house comes without a kitchen when it has counters and cupboards and a fully operational sink with plumbing and the electrical fixtures perfectly placed so that and into nooks perfectly sized for appliances. I don't see this argument debated anywhere in the planning board file, the definition of cooking facilities. Maybe I wasn't at the meeting. So cooking and the preparation of foods is prohibited. This isn't a situation that's being created just for now, but for all time, okay? And when the Joneses are gone and the Stiffs are gone, that house will likely still be standing. And who polices that? In fact, who polices it while they're all there? Will people even remember that this was debated? Is it a covenant? I don't know the answer to that question. Is it a covenant that will be recorded with the deed? Will the Stiffs have to knock on the door and say, oh, by the way, I'm your new neighbor, and do you realize that you can't have appliances here? So the planning board was put in a terrible position to make the structure conform to the ordinance. And the ordinance is being criticized as ambiguous in its definitions, when what's really wrong here is the order of events. Because if the structure had been permitted accurately before construction, it would have been built in compliance with the ordinance, and we wouldn't be having this discussion. I think it's a matter that'll have to be resolved probably at some other level. I can only make my best decision, and it's not clear to me that this is an accessory structure, and the accommodation is almost unenforceable over the long run, and doing otherwise sets a very bad precedent for the town, and it'll cost the town a lot of money down the road trying to enforce this for as long as the building exists. So I'm not in favor of letting this condition stand and or having this building described as an accessory structure. That's it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Norma.
Well, Mike, this is
Okay.
Jay. Yeah, I mean, Norma raises a really good question, and it strikes me as one that both we and the planning board struggled with in our respective deliberations because of the open-endedness of the potential for defining an accessory structure. And, you know, I suspect that at one time or another, we've all been in what we would agree is accessory structures that are really very nice. I can think of some horse barns that are nicer than houses that I've been in, but they are just that, they are an accessory structure. I fall back on the conditions, the findings of the planning board where they specified conditions. And they did this, it's my understanding, my recollection that they did this following an inspection of the premises, where they specifically said that kitchen appliances had to come out. Now, I agree. I don't have cooking facilities in my garage, but I suppose I could have a hot plate. I've seen workshops that have had hot plates and refrigerators and things like this. But I fall back on what the planning board concluded in their conditions of the approval, and that those conditions were met. I also admit to trying to put somewhat of a limited scope to my review is that I look at what we've got in front of us now. What may or may not happen down the road is really not within our purview at this point. What is within our responsibility is to take a look and say, did the planning board act inappropriately based upon the information provided to them in making their decision? I see that as really, that's our limited area of responsibility and authority. And my personal opinion is I find that they did. I agree with all the ambiguity that Norma spoke to, but I think that in my way of thinking, that's where it stops. Did the planning board act appropriately given the information that they were given? If yes, then that puts me in the position of saying, I support this as written.
Thank you, Jay. Mr. Bourne or Mr. Bonner?
I think Jay expressed it pretty well. Norma brought up some very good points. And I think, planning board acted on what they thought was appropriate. And, I'm not pleased about how things went, but we've got to act on the information we have before us.
Thank you.
Mike,
Yes,
I can understand Norma's angst with some of the process and so forth, but having dealt with a number of similar issues while on the planning board, both as original applications and as after the fact applications, I don't see that the fact that it was an after the fact application really did anything other than require that the Joneses modify the structure so that it would conform as if it had been an original application. Otherwise, it would have been, the application would have simply been denied. I think in our earlier discussion, I mentioned that the ordinance does not restrict specifically the characteristics of an accessory structure with respect to size and internal structures and uses, except that the criteria in the ordinance for the lot is that it can have only a single residential dwelling unit, given its the lot's physical characteristics. So the fact that you have an accessory structure is simply a matter of saying, okay, you can have the functions of a garage, the functions of a workshop, the functions of sleeping area, etc. And there is no explicit restriction on size. However, there is in the ordinance criteria that limit the total usage of the lot. So there are some checks on accessory structures, but the numbers sometimes appear very large compared to what you might think of as an accessory structure. So I have no problem with what the planning board determined by working with the applicant to make sure that the structure conformed with the requirements for a before the fact application, given that the situation was one for after the fact approval. Once it got reduced to the acceptable levels, then for the planning board to approve the structure or approve the application for the structure seems to me to be perfectly a proper thing to do. I'll leave it at that.
thank you, Dick. Anyone else? I agree with Norma. She brought up some really good points, and Jay as well, and especially Mr. Bourne. You've been doing this a long time, and thank you for a great explanation of this whole thing. And I really respect your insight into this, and you've been on the planning board before and now on the appeals board. So I'll leave it at that for right now. And does anyone else have any other questions or discussions, or we can move on to voting for each one of these? It's laid out in the discussion, the draft decision, as we did in the past one.
Mike, this is Jay. I would make a motion that we accept the explanation and finding with regard to accessory structure.
Second that.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Jay and seconded by Dave that we accept the explanation and on item number 1. And I'll have a roll call vote. Mrs. Blazer,
No,
David Bonner,
Yes.
Mr. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Bradshaw,
Yes,
and Mr. Hano, yes. Motion is carried 4-1. Find against the appellant in this first issue, number 1. Number 2 issue, the soils report. Any further discussion on that? Could I entertain a motion in a second for item number 2, please?
I move we accept the explanation as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. Jay,
I'll second it. Yeah.
thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to accept the explanation of item number 2, soils report. And again, we'll take a roll call vote. Mrs. Blazer,
no,
Mr. Bonner,
Yes.
Mr. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Bradshaw,
Yes,
and Mr. Hano, yes. Motion is carried 4-1. The next item is the floodplain, the flood management compliance.
That should be floodplain management compliance.
I'm sorry,
That's
floodplain.
okay, that's my fault. With your permission, I'll make that change.
Okay. So you're gonna change it to what, did you say, floodplain?
floodplain management.
You'll say floodplain management instead of flood management.
Okay. Thank you. So I wanted to, excuse me, go ahead, Dave.
I'll make a motion, we accept that as amended. We have to vote on the amendment for the title and then on the entire thing.
Yep.
could I say something? I don't know where, I'd missed the opportunity to say anything here.
Right, after we approve the amendment on the title, Norma, I think that would be the
Oh,
proper way.
Okay, I missed the amendment.
That's to change the title from flood management to floodplain management compliance.
Thank you.
That's item number 3 on page 5, Norma.
I might offer just to do it in one motion that we accept it with the correction that it's floodplain management so that we don't have to do an amendment to a subsequent motion. It's just all part of the same motion.
I think that's good. That's best, I think, Jay.
In that case, I would be happy to second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept the amendment.
No. We're just accepting Mr. Chair, I would just offer the suggestion that we're accepting the motion that the floodplain management compliance section.
Okay,
So everything got sort of put back into one. It really,
Okay. Gotcha. Sorry.
no, that's good.
Okay, so we'll have a motion has been made by Dave and seconded by Jay to accept item number 3.
I would like to ask a question. if I
Okay.
could, At this point. Okay. I don't find any evidence in the file for a publicly noticed site visit. I noticed that 2 people made or planned to make a site visit after one meeting. But I don't see that anybody else did, and I might be missing something. But I certainly don't see any public noticed site visit. So those words I have a problem with. A site visit, maybe.
Okay. Jim?
It was alleged by the parties that there had been a publicly noticed site visit. If that wasn't the case, then, there's no factual support for that, then fine. It might be a good idea to ask the parties' attorneys if they have any reference to this that in the record that they want to add or don't note.
Okay. Mr. Nagel?
My understanding, and I think it may be reflected in the minutes of the November 2019 meeting, is that the planning board, when this was filed, did not have a publicly noticed site visit. But each of the members, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, spoke to the fact that they had gone down as individuals in groups no larger than 2 to look at the property. So, and I know the code officer looked at the property and the code officer testified on this point about the property. That's my recollection, but I am, if to the extent this says there was publicly noticed site visit, that's not supported in the record.
Okay. Mr. Cunningham?
My memory is somewhat the same as Chris's. Certainly the code enforcement officer had visited the site before that November meeting. My recollection is that it was at that meeting that some of the planning board members said that they intended to go have a visit, and they agreed on a date. And that it was at a future meeting where we heard they reported on what they had seen. But I do recall that not all of them said they were able to, and that it was, I think, maybe only 3 of them. I was under the impression that they were giving notice. They were certainly announcing it at that meeting, but no, but I did not look to see publication of public notice.
Then, given that, could we amend the sentence to read planning board members also conducted site visits, at which time they inspected the property and building elevations?
Jim, that's an accurate statement, I believe, of what happened. And I concur with what John said in general.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. So we'll amend. What are we going to say? Amend it to say again, Jim, please?
Planning board members also conducted site visits, at which time they inspected the property and building elevations.
Okay. So again, could we Have a motion to include this all in one as we did in the past one.
So moved.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you, Dave.
Mike, I just want to make sure I understand. So right now what's on what Dave's suggesting is that we amend that motion to strike the words "a publicly noticed." Those words, correct? So it reads, the planning board also conducted site visits. You said that would have to be a plural, site visits at which time they inspected. Is that
Correct.
that's the amendment? Okay. Then I would,
Yeah, planning board members also conducted site visits because it,
board members. I
the
would say,
record says what it says, whether it was the board or members. And
then I would second the amendment.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to accept the decision as explained of item number 4. And I will call for a roll call vote again.
Point of order, Mike. I think what we need to do is we need to vote on the amendment, because we had another motion that was put on the floor. And now
I'm sorry.
through this discussion, we've amended that. So we need to vote on the amendment, and then we can vote on the article as amended if the amendment passes.
Okay, thank you. So we will vote on the amendment as agreed to. Norma Blazer, you agree to the amendment that's been made?
Yes, I do.
David Bonner,
Sorry, yes.
Jay,
Yes.
and Mr. Bourne,
Yes.
and Mr. Hano, yes. Motion carries 5-0. So now we need, I'll ask for motion to accept the decision as written of item number 4 after the amendments.
Item number 3, Mike.
Oops, I'm sorry, number 3. Number 3, I'm sorry. Jay?
Yes. Are you doing the roll call vote?
Yes, I just want to make sure that I got the motion correct.
Yeah.
By Dave and seconded by you.
Yes.
Yes. So it's going to be the motion as amended.
Correct. Motion as amended.
Yep.
For number 3.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Blazer,
Yes.
Mr. Bonner,
Yes.
Mr. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Bradshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Hano, yes. The motion carries 5-0. Okay. Moving on to item number 4. Post-decision filing of erosion and sedimentation control plan. Any discussions on this?
Move we accept it as presented.
Okay, thank you. And I need a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. So item number 4, we have a motion to accept as written by Mr. Bonner and seconded by Mr. Bourne. I'll call for a roll call vote again. Mrs. Blazer,
Got to figure out what yes means. Hold on just a second. Not, it is contrary to the ordinance, so I guess it's no, right? Thank you.
Mr. Bonner?
No.
Wait a minute.
So I'm sorry. Yes, yes.
I'm confused on,
The motion,
the motion is to accept what's as presented.
that's correct.
So,
So my vote is yes, as presented.
okay.
Okay, Mr. Bourne,
Yes, as presented.
Mr. Bradshaw,
Yes, sir.
and Mr. Hano, yes. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, we have a 5-0 vote on number 4.
Oh, I
To
have,
accept-
For one.
Oh, I'm sorry, 4-1. 4-1 to accept as written. Thank you. God, I hate getting old.
It's tough to count, you know, that many.
Whether
Not a
you're
function
old.
of, not a function of age, it's a function of issues.
Yeah.
I would like to say that I really, this is no reflection on the planning board whatsoever. I fully appreciate the position they were in, and I support them usually. I speak well of them always. So this is just my gut on this.
It's fine.
Thank you, that's fine.
So Mike, do you want a motion to wrap it up? I don't mean wrap up the meeting, but to tie everything together, the conclusion?
Yes, I would appreciate that.
So before I make the motion, give me maybe Jim, what was the wording that we added? That we accept the findings and that
Right.
this,
And to approve this written decision, and to approve this written notice of decision.
written notice of decision, thank you.
And just to be absolutely clear, what I was suggesting is that, this is your decision. The only thing we'll fill in to complete would be your names and the
Yes.
votes. And then you can sign it, and that would be the notice of decision. So that would be the only change that would be made to this as you adopt it. It basically would be typing in the names of the people who have made these decisions. I don't know if council has an issue with that. Please let me know.
I understood that. I want
Yeah.
to make sure we hit the right term in the motion, just for purposes of record keeping. So I would make a motion that we deny the appeal and approve the written notice of decision as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Dave seconded that.
Yes,
Thank you.
so Jay, would you just kindly review the motion that you made, please?
I would say that we, for reasons stated above, on motion by me, that we find, based upon the above findings, that we deny the appeal and approve this as our written notice of decision. Approve this document as our written notice of decision.
Okay, thank you. And that was seconded by David Bonner.
Yes.
Thank you. So we will proceed with a roll call vote. Norma Blazer,
Yes.
David Bonner,
Yes.
Richard Bourne,
Yes,
Jay Bradshaw,
Yes.
Michael Hano, yes. Motion's carried 5-0 in favor of denying this appeal. Thank you very much.
Mike, can I make a comment real quickly since we've gotten the votes out of the way?
Yes,
I just want to thank all of the people involved, the appellants and the attorneys. I know it's not easy on any of you, and particularly from the appellant standpoint. But we have to operate as a board on the evidence that's presented to us and make a decision. Hopefully this will put an end to this. This has been going on quite some time. And in my experience, that's not abnormal. But I think that you all have done a good job in expressing yourselves. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to do that. And obviously you attorneys for making things a little bit easier on us. Sometimes it's not very easy for lay people to understand things of this nature, but we'll get there. And we did today.
Thank you, Dave. And to add to that, I would like to personally thank the board members, myself, and especially Norma for her input as always and her detailed note-taking, and we really appreciate that. And again, it takes a lot of time for this, and we're all volunteers, and I appreciate it. So thank you very much. Jim, do you have anything else to add?
As a housekeeping matter, what I'll do is add the names and votes to what I had prepared, send that to you so that it then can be signed and then provided to the parties. And I would like to get that done within 7 days. But you'll have my changes this afternoon.
Okay,
I'll just
And I'll
ask,
provide them to other council as well, just for the, so that they understand what I've done.
So Jim, if you want to email that to me, I'll distribute that to the board through DocuSign, and they can add their electronic signatures. And then once everyone has attached their signatures, I'll make sure that all the participants here today get a copy of that.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Jay, did you have something?
no, I was just going to ask if that's how it was going to be handled, and Anthony was a step ahead of me as usual.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add just right now? So to the,
Not
Go ahead,
with
Jay.
this, but if we're done with this, we still have, just understand, when is our next meeting?
yes, correct. That's where I was going.
When is our next meeting?
Thank you, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
We adjourn. I'm sorry. Do we need
No,
to?
no,
Not
no,
yet.
we didn't.
Not yet.
Some
And
folks
I'll
are
let you
leaving.
set your next meeting. I'll get to work on this. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim. So our next meeting would be, I don't have my calendar, but do we need to have a meeting just yet? Or can we skip a month?
I'm not aware of any other business that we've got for January. Just for a placeholder, should I just keep the placeholder for February though, and we can adjust as needed when that time
That
gets.
sounds good to me.
It's the fourth, is it the third or the fourth Wednesday? I can't remember.
It's fourth.
Fourth is the 24th of February.
Yes.
Okay.
At
Very
7,
good.
we have vacillated.
Excuse me?
7 o'clock or 6 o'clock?
It's normally 7, unless you folks want to change it. 7 o'clock, okay?
Yeah, 7 o'clock's fine.
7 for me.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. Does anybody have anything else? And again, thank you, folks, for everything.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Don't raise your hand anymore. When they say, will you do this, say, no.
Yeah, oh well.
I'd like to know where we'll ever find a replacement for Norma. I mean, that this isn't gonna happen. You're here for life.
I know, well, maybe if I live long enough, I'd figure out what's going on too. That would be good.
Okay, anybody have anything else? Anthony?
Thank you guys for your service.
Thank you. Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Who said
Yeah.
that? Who said that?
Dave,
I'll second that.
Thank you, sir.
Who said that, Jay?
No, that was Richard. I was happy to stay all afternoon.
Who seconded that?
I did, Norma, Dick Bourne.
Oh, Dick Bourne. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And we'll just keep that on the calendar, Anthony, for future. And if we need to jump in and have a meeting, we'll do that, okay?
I hope I don't see you guys for the next few years.
No kidding.
Don't take that the wrong way, Mike.
I know.
Thanks all.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Bye, y'all.
All right, guys, thank you.
Bye-bye.